So this week we finish up the book of Numbers or Bamidbar. We read about oaths and not taking oaths. The sages and the rabbis say you should never make an oath. Yeshua said, just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Not to take up oaths because then you set yourself an obligation that maybe you can't do. That includes people who say, oh God, if you deliver me from this, I will do such and such. Okay? Don't do that. And there's a funny story about a man. He's trying to find a parking spot in a big major store parking lot, right? And everything is full. And he says, God, if you find me a parking spot right up close to the store so I don't have to walk far, I will do such and such for you. Just then, a car backed out, place where he could park just where he wanted to, and he parked and he says, okay, never mind, God. So God gave him a parking spot, but then he said, never mind. It wasn't God who did it, right? We've got to be careful in the things we say, right? It's like promises, you know. Little kids especially, our children, when they're young, they're like, I want to go here, I want to go there, and we say, well, maybe we'll think about it or whatever. But to them, it's like, oh, promise, you know, we get to go. Dad said we're going to go, right? But didn't promise. You just said, oh, look at it. We'll see, right? Didn't promise. But to little kids, that's a promise. And so then when we say we're not going, then it's like, oh, you broke your promise. And it's like, I didn't promise anything, you know, right? We see that. And so then our kids are mad at us and stuff, right? Well, God doesn't want us to do the same thing. You know, He doesn't want us making a vow or anything like that, because many times the things that we say we aren't going to do. Life gets in the way. We forget different things. That's why one of the reasons that in the Yom Kippur service for the evening is called the Kol Nidre service, which is the rescinding of oaths. Thank you. Is we do that on Yom Kippur, because if we have made an oath and we didn't keep it, then we need forgiveness from God, and it needs to be annulled. But one of the reasons that they came up with that is also because during the time of the church in Europe that was forcing Jewish people to either convert or die, many of them would say the thing that they needed to say in order to save their life, and they had no way of reckoning the oath that they made, you know. And so the sages came up with a prayer called the Kol Nidre, for people to be able to say and to ask God for forgiveness and stuff like that. And so that's where the Kol Nidre came from. But it's for any oaths, and the rabbis and the sages and even Yeshua taught, don't make an oath. Don't. Just let your yes be yes, your no be no, right? That's what he says. That's what the rabbis teach as well. That's Yeshua was a rabbi, right? And so we need to understand that we got to be careful with what we say, you know. It's easy to do and not even realize it, you know. And so that's one of the things I do like about Kol Nidre. It really has to do with accidental oaths, things that we say accidentally, not realizing, right? Promises made that we can't keep. Just as we don't want to do that with our kids, we don't want to do that with God either. As we just read, you know, He will hold it against us if we don't follow along. A repeating thing. Yeah. So now different is still like oaths of office, stuff like that's different. That's something different. But what we want to look at here too is we're going to look at sixth commandment. What is it? You shall not kill. Why can't I think? I know it. I just don't know why it's escaping me right now. We're going to be going over these again here just probably this week. Yeah, number 6. I'm sorry. Number 6. You shall not murder, right? You shall not murder. It's not kill. The word in the Hebrew, there's 2 Hebrew words. One means murder and one means kill, right? So when you ever hear people say you shall not kill, it's a mistranslation. It's murder. God does allow you to kill in self-defense when it comes to war, when it comes to different aspects of those things, of breaking God's commandments, accidental, different things like that. Murder, on the other hand, is something that is done in anger against somebody. It's planned out usually.
It's also unrighteous. That's the thing. The Hebrew word translates not even murder, it's no unrighteous, no unrighteous killing. You're not killing righteously.
Well, yeah. Do not murder, right? Because God does give us, opportunity for killing. Even in Ecclesiastes, it says there's a time for killing and a time for living, right? There's a time for war and a time for peace.
And halakhically, even if it's to the point where most of the things that would carry a death penalty, even as it goes on, halakhically, you'll see that there has to be a stern warning given under most instances of the death penalty, unless you're caught in the act.
Caught in the act of somebody, and that's the thing too. What we read in here is the setting up of we already heard the court system that God had Moses set up with judges of thousands, judges of hundreds, judges of 10, the Sanhedrin, as we came to know it as. The 70 men of the Sanhedrin, which was usually headed by the high priest, and the king would sit and be part of that as well. Matter of fact, the king wasn't made to rule over, and like we've seen kings in the other countries and stuff. The king was there to be the main judge. He was there to help judge the people, to help in correcting errors and stuff like that. That was one of the things the king was supposed to do. That's why God said not to amass wealth, not to amass many horses or wives and stuff like that, because that type of stuff can blind your eyes, right?
It's also like when someone would write 2 scrolls of Torah, 2 separate scrolls of Torah. So if you could go
Study day and night, it says. He was to study day and night. Yep. So he knew it. He was to write it for himself, so he knew it inside and out. But in here we read, that, and the unique thing with this too is that it can't be just on the words of one person, right? Something that we see in our society too much today, and why it gets, sometimes to get the wrong person, right? And sometimes we just go off of circumstantial evidence and not actual evidence. Sometimes we go off just the witness of one person or not 2. God requires 2 people. There has to be 2 people, and they have to be able to be accepted as witnesses, because just because somebody witnessed something doesn't make them a good witness. That's why they were tested, and there were ways that they used to tell if they were a valid witness or somebody just spouting off hearsay or something like that, right? And we've seen that even today, where that we've seen this in trials and stuff today, where a lot of false witnesses come up because they heard so and so say something, or it's hearsay, but of course they're like, well, I'm a witness, I heard him say it, or I seen him, or whatever, but they're not really. And even in Yeshua's day, false witnesses were brought against him, right? But I wouldn't doubt it.
well, and this is why when it comes to certain types of sin, exactly the test is this. If you see somebody who is about to go in sin, you warn them, will and if they make a confession, it's like treason in the United States. Um, and they say outright, yeah, I know I'm going to commit the sin, and then go commit the sin, and that's one of them. It's a type of sin.
Mm-hmm.
So it must be done publicly. You must
Yeah.
have two witnesses to go to him.
Minimum of 2 witnesses, yeah.
Minimum. And then you must say, brother, do you realize you're about to sin purposefully? And if they do it,
Yeah, with the example of Pinchas we read the week before, the whole community of leaders was a witness to what he was about to do, and Phinehas killed them both. Did what he was supposed to do. But anyways, the other thing is that Yeshua had false witnesses brought up against him as well, and stuff, and so we know that. And one of the unique things about the Torah too that it talks about is that if you make a false accusation against somebody, and you're trying to get this person killed because maybe you desire something that they have, so if you can get them out of the way, then you can get it, right? That's the 10th commandment. Not to desire the things of your neighbor and stuff like that, right? But if you're found out that these accusations are false and what you were trying to do was to get them put to death, then what happens is that person is released, but the person who gave the false accusation stuff, that death penalty is carried out for them, or whatever was going on, whether it was a death penalty or a fine or jail time, whatever it might be, sold into slavery. That's what happens to that person. Okay, so it came back on them. And not only that, but we also see where God says that a kidnapper is to be put to death too. Doesn't matter if the person is still alive and he still has them, or if he's already sold them. The kidnapper is to be put to death. You know, and that's I believe they need to start bringing that back again today.
so the term kanal means to steal another human being. Thou shalt not steal another human being.
And that's, yeah, that goes into a lot of different things, yeah. There's some of the things that they should be bringing back today, because we've got these issues of people being taken, missing, stuff like that, right? Some people are missing because they want to be missing. Others are missing because somebody took them. And that, in that case, those people that did the taking should face the death penalty. There shouldn't be any mercy on someone like that. Should not be any mercy on a murderer. But the Torah does say you need to get it right. There has to be at least 2 or more witnesses, and we need to use actual evidence, not circumstantial evidence. Remember, that's what it's called, circumstantial evidence. We don't have it, but we know that this happened. Sorry, you can't do that. Just like I've seen, I can't remember the guy's name, was accused of killing his wife. They had no body. He got the death penalty. Thank God that they never found the body, but another guy came and confessed that he was the one who did it, and then brought him to where he had gotten rid of her body, all because of circumstantial evidence. And he was released, and the other guy went to prison. But those are things that happen. That's why circumstantial evidence, you can't use it. And a lot of times people are put in jail under circumstantial evidence, and they were wrong. That's why you see a lot of these things come back, where they release people that were unrightly convicted. Okay. One of the things I'm glad about, though, is that they use DNA testing now, which is almost 100% correct. And they can tell whether it's the actual person or somebody that's a relative to them, different things like that. All kinds of different things. So that's not circumstantial. That would be actual, because it's actually a part of them, right? So different things like that. I also believe that drug dealers and those who make illegal drugs should also face the death penalty, because they are killing people. Whether they mean to or not, they are making something that they know can kill people. You know? Um, that's, huh? Oh, trafficking? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, human trafficking, drug trafficking, those people need to have the death penalty. And I'm talking that it needs to be, once we know for sure that everything is right, you know, give them a couple weeks or whatever, but it should be carried out as soon as possible. That type of thing. That's what they used to do. But, you know, again, we don't want to get it wrong either, so there needs to be something there in that way. It has nothing to do with forgiving them or not forgiving them. It's what the law states needs to be done. God's law does say that now, even to a point of taking somebody and whipping them right as soon as it's done. You know, I mean, that's a different thing. But here God sets up a court system so that the person who accidentally kills somebody can at least, well, even the person who did kill somebody is going to be brought to court. There, even if he did deliberately kill him, he is able to go to the city of refuge until the trial. And when the trial comes out, if he's found guilty, then he is to be killed. But if he's found not guilty, then he has to remain in that city of refuge until the high priest dies. And you know, before, which is interesting, before the first temple was destroyed, the high priests, they lived for a long time. You know, they lived well. They're recorded to have lived well over 100 years each one. So there wasn't that many high priests between the time of the temple being built and the time of its destruction. But the second temple, the high priest, there was probably like, say, the first temple, I think there was maybe around 20 high priests, maybe. In the second temple, there was over 300. So, and a lot of it too was because the Romans would sell the position to the highest bidder. Yeah. Stealing money, doing just like we read with Yeshua going in, is tipping over the money changers' tables and the animals for sacrifice and stuff like that. I mean, that's something that should have been done outside the temple, outside the grounds, but not the money changing thing where they were stealing money from the people. And the reason why they had the money changers is because what's on a Roman coin at that time was a Caesar, which is a false god, right? It's an image because he thinks of himself as God. So you can't bring that into the temple. So you have to exchange it for temple currency, right? And so that's what the money changes were about. Changing the Roman currency into proper temple currency, which was good in Jerusalem and in the land of Judea. It wasn't just something that you did, it was good for that as well. So anytime Roman currency or from another country too, you would exchange it for the temple currency, the currency of the land of Judea at that time, or of Israel. And so we see that even with Yeshua. And so with these cities of refuge, God is making a way, because it used to be that if somebody killed somebody, their family was obligated to kill them, whether it was an accident or not. You know, it was lawlessness. And God was trying to bring civilization. Where do we get civilization from? From the Torah. From the Torah. God makes it so that that this lawlessness of killing somebody, and it's something that's going to repeat. You know, we had the feud of the McCoys and the Hatfields, right? You realize that feud didn't end until 1997 when they signed a treaty with them. Did you know that? That was a long time. It was over 100 years that thing lasted.
And you know it was over? It was over a grove of standing pine trees.
Yeah.
Every 100 years or so, the river that was between
Would move.
Pennsylvania and
Yeah, Kentucky. Well, it was Kentucky and West Virginia.
Kentucky.
Yeah, yeah. And the river would move, so the border would move and so forth. Yeah, it was really stupid, you know, over something stupid. But a lot of people were killed over it on both sides. So It was to keep that stuff, that type of stuff from happening, you know, to bring a civilized way of law and order to the land, to not be spilling blood, especially innocent blood, right? So God was bringing civilization and a civil code to Israel, not just to Israel, but it was to be a an example to the other nations, right? Like it says in our Haftorah portion, go and look, what other nation has God taken out of another nation, you know, to be a people? He hasn't, you know. Almost all countries that have done conquering and stuff like that, the people that were conquered have become part of that country. And sorry to say, even the Native Americans have become part of this country, you know. Even though they might have their reservations and stuff like that, they still are considered Americans. They still use American money. They still use American judiciary, laws, stuff like that, right? So even though they might have a separate thing, they have a separate, but they're still part of the greater whole. Okay, that's just like any state, you know. All right, but that's the way things have gone for years, you know. I mean, that's why Rome, not just Rome, but other countries, when they emperors, Assyria, Babylon, stuff like that, they'd move people out of a certain area and bring in other people to dislodge them from what they were known, from what they knew, what their inheritance was, to something different that they had no ties to confuse them and to make them more docile and rulable, right? And that's why we see why Assyria took the northern tribes. Now, not all those tribes were taken. I mean, there was only, from Assyrian writings, they only took about 18,000 people from the northern tribes. They left everybody else there. Okay, so when we talk about lost tribes, they were lost. Those people were lost out of those tribes, but those tribes still exist. They still exist even today. Matter of fact, if you talk to the government in Israel and the rabbis and so forth there, all the tribes are accounted for. There isn't one that's missing. Some of them have gone to different areas and stuff, like especially during the Babylon type time era. Huh? I don't know what happened, but I know I've heard people say that, but I have yet to see any proof. But yeah, I know. But anyways, so, and this is what the United States has brought too. Is, you know, the United States was founded on biblical principles, Judeo-Christian values, as they call it, right? And it's not just the 10 Commandments as it's known, or the 10 sayings as we understand them. It's how the judiciary was set up, you know, small courts, medium-sized courts, big courts, and then your main court, right? Those who keep law and order, you know, they didn't call them police back then and stuff there. They, you know, used regular soldiers and stuff that would patrol cities and stuff like that to keep the peace, because human beings tend to fight a lot, you know, no matter whether they're peaceful or what. You know, people got to realize that that's why we need a law enforcement. That's not corrupt, though, right? I'm not saying ours is corrupt. I mean, there are some bad people in those places, but the majority of them are good, and they're trying to do the best they can. But everybody's human. Mistakes are made, stuff like that, right? And we got to understand that. Even then, mistakes are made. And I'm not saying that every person that was put to death under the Torah was necessarily guilty. Mistakes are made because men tend to carry their own ideas into things too, and their own desires, their own outcomes, right? But God has made this so that we understand that that in this, that with that, there's also compassion and mercy. God desires us to be compassionate and merciful. Even to the person who's committed murder, even though he may have to die, to pray for them and different things like that. Make sure that justice is being done, but correctly, stuff like that. That's why the importance is for us to teach our children right and wrong. I know the schools tend to look at right and wrong as well. You can't have an absolute, right? That's what they say. You can't have an absolute. Everything is what the word they use, changing, right? Um, but it's not true. God is absolute. Huh? Yeah, degrees of grayness, stuff like that. But God isn't like that. He he is a God of absolute. He has absolutely given us the Torah. Absolutely right and wrong, right? He's given us blessing and curse. He's given us the choice to um, between good and evil, between blessing and curse, and between life and death. And he says, choose the good, so they can choose, so you get the blessing and to live. But if you reject me and choose evil, then you get the curse and you will die. That's what that's all about. He's given us the choice. It's up to us. I hear people say, accuse God of sending people to hell. I'm sorry, God doesn't send people to hell. People send themselves because either they reject God or they, basically reject God in His ways. Yes.
My friend was telling me about this Discord server that her current friends left because they said if Jesus was here right now, Trump would be.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's politics, but we're yeah, that's dumb. But anyways, so anyways, as we go this week, think about it too. Also, Yeshua says in there that when we're reading in the Besorah that that if we have something against our brother, we should forgive him, so that God, who has forgiven us, will forgive us too. That's a big thing. God will forgive us if we ask for the sins we commit against Him, right? But it's up to us to ask. That's why the 30 days before Rosh Hashanah and 7 days before Yom Kippur, it's a time of reconciliation with people, forgiving people, getting things right, not just with you and God, but with you and your fellow man. Okay, and that's what Yeshua is all about. If we don't forgive our brothers, it says God will not forgive us. We're not willing to do that. We need to be willing to forgive, no matter what it is. And believe me, sometimes there's things that have happened that are, it's like, how can you ever get through that? How can you ever forgive? And we've had some people we know that have had to go through that, where something was done to them and their family that is like, how do you forgive somebody like that? How do you? It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. And it's easy to say something and not do it, but it's easy to say something. But it makes it that much tougher sometimes when something like that has been done, to be able to forgive someone. And you find yourself fighting it all the time. They something we had talked about, this guy had been gone to prison for what he did, and they were having a hard time forgiving, but they eventually, as the years went by, they thought that they had forgiven the person until the guy showed up in the public. And then they realized that they hadn't, that their anger, their depression, their everything came back. And we talked about it and said that I thought we'd forgiven him. I thought I had, but when he showed up there, it all came back. And sometimes God allows us to face those things to help us know where we're at, to realize that maybe we didn't. Because we haven't seen them or whatever, we think we have. And so God then will bring those things back to us to remind us of what we need to do, that maybe we haven't wholeheartedly done it. And as it says, time does heal, so eventually, hopefully, as long as you're working, if your heart's desire is to do that, God knows that. That's part of having a circumcised heart, is for God, right? So as we go this week, think about those things. Who's done what to you? We got Yom Kippur, or the high holidays coming up in September. in October. I mean, we got 10 more readings to go before we're done with the Torah, but in that time we've got several festivals. We've got special readings that are going to be in there too for the festivals and stuff. But it's too early to get start with forgiving other people and seeking God's forgiveness and getting our lives straightened out ourselves, right? Elul is a reminder, but like I said, it doesn't have to start then. It can start right now. It can start today, you know. As Yeshua's prayer that he gave to his Talmudim, his students, talks about, forgive us as we forgive each other, or others who have sinned against us, right? Forgive us as we've sinned against you, for sinning against you, as for those also have sinned against us, right? We need to be like him, right? And part of that is willing to forgive, and even when it's hard. And I know we've talked to other people that have had things that are just so difficult to forgive someone because of the things that have gone on, but it's not for them, it's for you. It's for your health. Doesn't matter whether they accept your forgiveness or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's for you. It's for you, not necessarily for them. I mean, we can't look at it that way necessarily, but we got to look at it that it's mainly for us, because it's helping us out both physically and spiritually, right? When we have unforgiveness in our soul, in our body, it can wreak havoc on our bodies in the physical. But when we give that forgiveness to people who, especially those who are like, why should I forgive them? You know, they need to forgive me first, or whatever. They need to ask me to apologize to me or whatever, right? But it helps our bodies to heal them, you know, but also helps our spirit to grow and draw closer to God, you know. And that's the important thing, is drawing closer to God. So even with these cities of refuge, it has to do with mercy and compassion for everybody. Everybody gets a chance to have their day in court, you might say, and not to have the barbaric murderers, you know, stuff going on, innocent blood being spilt or whatever it might be. You know, have some civility to everybody, right? That's what we need. So, all right. Bow your heads for the priestly blessing. Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing in the Torah written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aharon and his sons, the priests, your holy people, as it is said. May the Lord bless you and protect you. Maybe you will. May the Lord make his face shine toward you and be gracious to you. Maybe you will. May the Lord turn his face toward you and grant you peace. Yevarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. Have a great week. Shavua Tov, a good week. Good month this month of. So on the 3rd of August is Tish B'Av. It's an all-day fast from the evening of the 8th of Av, which will be the 2nd of August, to the evening of the 3rd of August, the evening of the 9th of Av. If you guys want to do that, I'm just letting you know. It is there. It's the only other fast that is a full fast, like Yom Kippur. All the other fasts usually that are there, that Yeshua talks about, that the prophets talk about, are minor fasts, so they're usually from sun up to sundown, and not everything. But remember, if you have health issues and stuff, and it's not a good idea for you to fast, don't fast. I mean, you can maybe limit yourself to something or whatever, but, you know, just think about that, okay? Also, remember Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, we have our Torah Club. We do that on Zoom. We have our Wednesday studies coming back up in the fall after school starts. I have ordered the new books for our study, so I'll get that out on, huh? Oh. But I will get a take a picture for the study group for Wednesday night and show you which ones we've got 3 that we're going to go through. Huh? Oh, I did send those already. Yeah. So I got the first one because I put them in order. So I got the first set. The other ones I'll get later as we go. But they should be real good, especially helping for people who are not Jewish but are Messianic to understand where they are, you know, and even for those who are Jewish and Messianic to help them to understand where they are. So, but other than that, thank you all for coming and have a great week. So, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Good job.